My husband left me stranded on a remote beach as a prank, but he wasn't laughing when I got my revenge. Everyone at the country club thought we were the golden couple. Jake, with his perfectly tailored suits and million-dollar smile, and me, Emma, always a step behind him in designer dresses he'd chosen, smiling that practiced smile that never quite reached my eyes. Not that anyone noticed. They were too busy watching Jake, as was his preference. "You're so lucky," they'd whisper when Jake was charming someone important across the room. "He's such a catch." And I would nod because on paper, Jake Matthews was everything a woman could want. Successful real estate developer. Handsome in that classically chiseled way. Charismatic enough to sell sand in a desert. When we'd met 5 years ago at a charity gala, he'd swept me off my feet with grand gestures and promises of a perfect life. What I didn't know then was how tightly he would hold the reins of that life. "Emma, sweetie," he'd say, examining my outfit before we left for events, "don't you think the blue dress would make a better impression on the Hendersons? You know how important this deal is." Or, "I took the liberty of canceling your lunch with Kate. My clients are in town, and I need you to host them at the house instead." Or, my personal favorite, "I'm managing our investments. You don't need to worry your pretty head about the finances." And I accepted it all with a smile, because that's what perfect wives did, right? Stand by their man. Support their ambitions. Fade into the background when necessary, which with Jake was most of the time. The morning news of my Uncle Richard's passing came on a Tuesday. Jake had been in the shower when I got the call from my Aunt Martha, sobbing through her explanation. "He always adored you, Emma," she'd said between tears. "You were like the daughter he never had." Uncle Richard had been my father's older brother, a bachelor with a penchant for smart investments and a quiet life away from spotlight. He'd been the one to teach me chess when I was 7, to encourage my interest in photography when I was a teenager, to quietly support my college education when my parents couldn't afford it. "There will be a reading of the will next week," Aunt Martha continued. He wanted you there." I hung up just as Jake emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, scrolling through his phone. "Who was that?" he asked without looking up. "Aunt Martha," I said, my voice catching. "Uncle Richard passed away last night." Jake finally glanced up, his expression shifting to what I'd come to recognize as his appropriate sympathy face, the same one he used when dealing with clients going through divorce or financial troubles. "That's too bad, babe. He was the weird one with all the books, right? Wasn't he kind of a loner?" I felt something twist inside me. He wasn't weird. He was brilliant and kind. Jake waved his hand dismissively. Sure. "When's the funeral?" "I'll have to check my calendar. I've got that golf tournament with the mayor this weekend." "Next Tuesday," I said quietly. I've got that meeting with the investors from Chicago. You go ahead, though. Family obligations and all that." He kissed my forehead and walked to the closet, topic closed. I went to the funeral alone, and to the reading of the will, where I sat stunned as the family attorney explained that Uncle Richard had left me the bulk of his estate, a surprisingly substantial sum that included property, investments, and liquid assets worth well over $8 million. He was quite the savvy investor, the attorney explained. Lived well below his means. Classic millionaire next door scenario. My Aunt Martha squeezed my hand. "He was so proud of you, Emma. Always said you had a good head on your shoulders." On the drive home, my mind raced. This inheritance could change everything. Freedom. Options. A life where I wouldn't have to ask permission or apologize for taking up space. Then came the thought that stopped me cold. What would Jake do if he knew? I'd seen how he treated people with money. How he changed his tactics, his tone, his entire approach. He'd smell the opportunities, the connections, the possibilities for expanding his business. And he'd take control, just as he always did. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made my decision. I wouldn't tell him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The lawyer had mentioned that the transfer of assets could be handled discreetly. Many of our clients prefer privacy in these matters, he'd said. That night, Jake asked about the funeral over dinner, barely looking up from his phone. It was nice, I said. Very small. Uncle Richard wouldn't have wanted anything elaborate. Did he leave anything to your parents? I hesitated for just a moment. Some books. A few family heirlooms. Nothing worth much then, Jake concluded, returning to his email. No, I said softly. Nothing worth much. And that became the first real secret of our marriage. I set up meetings with financial advisors recommended by Uncle Richard's attorney. Established accounts in my name only. Made plans that didn't include Jake's oversight or approval. For the first time in our marriage, I had something that was entirely mine. Something that couldn't be controlled, directed, or diminished by the man who claimed to love me but treated me like an accessory to his ambitions. It changed nothing outwardly. I still played the role of the perfect wife. Still stood beside him at parties, still deferred to his decisions, still endured his friends and their casual disregard for anyone who wasn't Jake. But inwardly, something had shifted. I began to see the cracks in our perfect facade more clearly. The way his hand would grip my arm too tightly when I spoke to other men. The subtle put-downs disguised as jokes. The constant reminders of how lucky I was to have him. What would you even do without me, Emma? He'd laugh after handling some minor household issue. You're so adorably helpless sometimes. I'd smile and thank him, all while knowing that I now had the means to do anything I wanted. Go anywhere. Be anyone. The knowledge was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. Then came the announcement of the couple's trip to celebrate his latest successful development project, a luxury resort on the mainland. Jake and his 3 closest friends, all cut from the same ambitious, overbearing cloth, and their wives. A weekend getaway to a remote, pristine beach accessible only by boat. It'll be perfect, Jake declared, not bothering to ask if I had other plans or preferences. I've already booked everything. All you need to do is pack and look pretty. I nodded and smiled that perfect wife smile, not knowing that this trip would be the breaking point of our marriage. Not knowing that Jake's idea of entertainment would push me past the point of pretending. Not knowing that the woman who would return from that beach would be fundamentally changed. But then again, Jake didn't know a lot of things about me anymore. And he was about to learn just how expensive that ignorance would be. The morning of our beach trip arrived with picture-perfect weather, clear blue skies, and a gentle breeze that seemed almost cruelly deceptive given what was to come. Jake was in rare form, barking orders at me while simultaneously charming his friends who'd arrived early to load the chartered boat. Emma, grab the coolers from the garage, he called over his shoulder, not bothering to look back as he greeted Carter and his wife with enthusiastic hugs. I watched the interaction from our driveway, noting how Jake's entire demeanor shifted when others were present, like flipping a switch from demanding husband to charismatic host in an instant. The boat was impressive, a gleaming white vessel with enough room for our entire party, Jake and me, plus his 3 closest friends, Carter, Reese, and Devin, and their wives Melissa, Tara, and Jenna. The men had been friends since college, and now formed what Jake proudly called his success circle, all of them wealthy, ambitious, and, from my perspective, cut from the same self-important cloth. Ladies, welcome aboard, Jake announced as we all climbed in, the men already cracking open beers despite the early hour. I settled in next to Melissa, who gave me a tight smile. Excited? She asked quietly. Sure. I replied automatically, the answer expected of Jake Matthews' supportive wife. The journey to the secluded beach took nearly an hour, during which the men clustered at the front of the boat, laughing too loudly at inside jokes while we wives made polite conversation in the back. I'd long ago recognized the hierarchy in these gatherings. The men led, we followed. Today, however, something felt different. I caught significant glances between the men, particularly Jake and Carter, who kept checking their watches and smirking. When we arrived, the beach was stunning, a perfect crescent of white sand bordered by palm trees, completely deserted as Jake had promised. Exclusive access, he bragged while planning the trip. Nobody for miles. We set up our picnic area with colorful beach towels, umbrellas, and an elaborate spread of food and drinks. Jake insisted on taking photos for his social media accounts, positioning me just so, his hand gripping my waist a little too tightly. Perfect wife, perfect life, he murmured as he snapped the pictures, his smile never reaching his eyes. After lunch and swimming, the men grew restless. Jake approached me, his expression suddenly concerned. "Hey, why don't you take your camera and check out the tide pools around that bend?" He pointed to a distant curve of shoreline. "I heard there are some amazing shell formations, perfect for those artsy shots you like." I hesitated, something in his tone striking me as odd, but nodded. "Sure, I'll be back in a bit." "Take your time," he said, patting my shoulder. "No rush." I grabbed my camera and headed down the beach, not looking back. The sand was hot beneath my feet, but the walk felt good after sitting all morning. When I reached the bend Jake had mentioned, I discovered he wasn't lying. There were beautiful tide pools teeming with colorful fish and intricate shells. I lost myself in photography, kneeling to capture the perfect angles. It was the sudden absence of distant voices that alerted me first. The background noise of laughter and conversation had disappeared. I straightened up, looking back toward our picnic spot, a strange uneasiness settling in my stomach. The beach was empty. Frowning, I walked back quickly, my camera bouncing against my hip. As I neared our setup, the truth became sickeningly clear. All our supplies remained, coolers, towels, umbrellas, but the boat was gone. And with it, everyone else. "Jake." I called out uselessly, my voice swallowed by the crash of waves. "Hello." Nothing. No response. No sign of anyone. Panic flooded through me as I realized I had no phone. Jake had collected everyone's devices that morning, claiming we should all unplug for the day, storing them in a waterproof case on the boat. I frantically searched through our belongings, hoping someone had left a phone behind, but found nothing. The isolation of our location hit me with full force. Jake had specifically chosen this beach because it was remote, accessible only by boat, with no nearby resorts or hiking trails. Just miles of uninhabited coastline. I sat heavily on a beach towel, mind racing. Water wouldn't be a problem. They'd left the coolers. Food too, though mostly party snacks. But there was no shelter from the increasingly intense afternoon sun, no real shade except for a few sparse palm trees, and absolutely no way to signal for help. As minutes stretched into hours, my initial panic gave way to a cold anger. This wasn't an accident. The careful directions to those specific tide pools, the collection of phones, Jake's insistence that I take my time. It had all been deliberate. I created a makeshift shelter using beach towels stretched between coolers, rationing water as the sun beat down mercilessly. My skin began to redden and burn despite the sunscreen I'd applied earlier. Worst of all was the uncertainty. How long did they plan to leave me here? An hour? All day? Overnight? The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when I finally heard the distant hum of a boat engine. Relief washed through me, quickly followed by renewed anger as I scrambled to my feet. Our boat appeared around the bend, music blaring, voices shouting and laughing. As it approached shore, I could see all of them, Jake, his friends, and even their wives, drinks in hand, apparently having the time of their lives. Jake jumped out before the boat fully docked, phone in hand, filming me. "There she is. The castaway returns to civilization," he shouted, his friends erupting in laughter behind him. "Did you make friends with any volleyballs?" Carter called out, referencing Castaway. I stood frozen, disbelief and rage warring within me. They were laughing. All of them. This had been entertainment. "You should see her face," Jake said, still filming. "This is going viral for sure. Husband pranks wife with desert island experience. Internet gold." I looked past him to the other wives. Melissa wouldn't meet my eyes. Tara looked uncomfortable but silent. Jenna was actually giggling, clinging to Devin's arm. "You left me here," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "For hours. With no phone. No way to call for help." Jake lowered his phone, finally registering my tone. "Oh, come on, Em. It was just a bit of fun. We were always coming back." "What if something had happened?" I demanded, gesturing around the isolated beach. "What if there had been an emergency?" "But there wasn't," Jake replied dismissively. "You're fine. It makes for a great story. I stared at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time in our marriage, the casual cruelty, the complete disregard for my feelings or safety, all for his entertainment and social media content. In that moment, something inside me snapped irreparably. The perfect wife facade cracked, then shattered completely. "Let's pack up," Jake said, turning away as if the matter was settled. "It's getting cold." I helped gather our things in mechanical silence, every movement deliberate as a new understanding crystallized within me. On the boat ride back, I sat alone at the stern, watching the beach disappear into the distance. The woman who boarded that boat to return to the mainland was not the same one who had left it hours earlier. Something fundamental had shifted, a switch flipped that couldn't be reversed. And Jake had no idea what he had just unleashed. That night, after returning from the beach, I pretended everything was fine. I showered away the salt and sand, applied aloe to my sunburned skin, and smiled when Jake suggested we order takeout. Inside, though, a clock had started ticking. "You're not still upset about today, are you?" Jake asked, scrolling through his phone as we ate dinner. He was already editing the video, adding music and captions. "No," I lied smoothly. "You're right. It was just a joke." He looked up, surprised but pleased.
"See?
"I knew you'd come around. The video's already got 300 likes, by the way. People think it's hilarious." I nodded and took another bite of food. "I'm sure they do." That night, I lay awake long after Jake had fallen asleep, meticulously planning my next steps. The inheritance from Uncle Richard remained my closely guarded secret, a financial safety net Jake knew nothing about. Now it would become my escape route. The following morning, I waited until Jake left for work before making my first call. "Ms. Roberts? This is Victoria Chun from Meridian Trust. The financial advisor Uncle Richard had recommended greeted me. I've been managing the portfolio you inherited. Is everything all right? We don't usually hear from you mid-month." "Everything's fine," I assured her. "But I'd like to make some changes to my accounts. Would it be possible to meet today?" 3 hours later, I sat in Victoria's sleek downtown office, signing documents that would transfer my inherited assets to new accounts under my maiden name alone. "These are significant moves," Victoria noted, watching me sign with a steady hand. "May I ask if everything is all right with your personal situation?" I met her gaze directly. "Let's just say I'm ensuring my financial independence." She nodded, understanding immediately. "I see. Well, these changes will be processed immediately. The new accounts will be accessible only to you, with dual-factor authentication. And as requested, all correspondence will go to your new email address and the P.O. box you've established." "Perfect," I said, signing the final document. My next stop was a small law firm recommended by Victoria, specializing in family law. The attorney, Eleanor Reeves, listened without judgment as I outlined my situation. "So you want to prepare for divorce, but you're not ready to file yet?" she clarified.
Exactly.
"I need to understand my options and protect my separate assets." "Smart," Eleanor nodded. "Too many clients come to me after financial damage has been done. Let's document everything properly." Over the next week, I moved with calculated precision while maintaining a perfect facade at home. I created digital copies of all important documents, established credit in my maiden name, quietly removed my name from joint ventures with Jake where legally possible, compiled evidence of Jake's controlling behavior, including the beach prank video he'd proudly posted online. Most importantly, I secured a small apartment across town, paying 6 months' rent in advance. I furnished it minimally, but comfortably through online orders delivered directly there. A fresh start, waiting for the right moment. At home, I became the wife Jake had always wanted, agreeable, supportive, seemingly content to exist in his shadow. I laughed at his jokes, complimented his business decisions, and never mentioned the beach incident again. The perfect performance. "You've been in such a good mood lately," Jake commented one evening, pulling me close on the couch. I was worried that stupid prank had messed things up between us. "It was just a joke," I echoed his words, smiling. "Besides, look how popular your videos become." He grinned proudly. "Over 1 million views now." Some influencer shared it and it just exploded. People can't get enough of it. That's amazing, I said, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. Every view, every like, every laughing comment was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Jake didn't notice the changes in me, how I now maintained digital backups of everything, how I'd started wearing my grandmother's ring instead of the flashy diamond he'd given me, how I'd begun packing emotionally long before I would pack physically. He was too busy basking in his newfound viral fame, riding the wave of attention from strangers who found humor in my humiliation. His friends from the boat trip called frequently, suggesting new pranks they could film. Jake always took these calls in my presence, watching for my reaction. I gave him none, maintaining my mask of indifference. "You guys outdid yourselves with that beach prank," Carter said during a speakerphone call. "What's next? Fake police arrest? Pretend house fire?" They laughed. I smiled and continued preparing dinner, as if I hadn't heard. "Emma's been totally cool about it," Jake told them, shooting me a glance. "Right, babe?" "Of course," I replied, my voice light. It was just a prank. What Jake failed to understand was that while he was playing games, I was playing chess. Each move carefully considered, several steps ahead, with a clear endgame in mind. In the 3 weeks following the beach incident, I had systematically dismantled our financial entanglements without disturbing a single piece on the visible board of our marriage. The woman Jake had left stranded on that beach wasn't coming back. In her place stood someone new, someone calculating, determined, and completely done with playing the perfect wife. The clock was ticking down, but Jake couldn't hear it. His grand prank had backfired spectacularly.
He just didn't know it yet.
A month after the beach incident, Jake announced he was throwing a celebration dinner at our home. The beach prank video had reached 5 million views, and some minor celebrity had shared it, calling it relationship goals. Jake was ecstatic. "We need to capitalize on this momentum," he told me, pacing our kitchen island with the energy of a man possessed. "I've invited everyone who matters, Carter and the guys, obviously, but also some potential investors for the new development. This video has given me more visibility than years of networking." I nodded, already preparing a mental list of what needed to be done. "How many people?" 20, maybe 25. "Nothing you can't handle." He kissed my cheek absently. "Wear that black dress I like. The one that shows off your figure." "Of course," I replied automatically, though inside, I was counting down. Each demand, each dismissal, each moment of being treated like an accessory rather than a partner brought me closer to my breaking point. But not yet. The timing wasn't quite right. I spent the next 3 days preparing for the dinner party, ordering catering, arranging flowers, selecting wines, all while maintaining my facade of the supportive wife. Jake barely noticed the effort, too busy posting teasers about a big announcement coming at the celebration. The night of the party arrived, our home transformed into the perfect entertainment venue. I wore the black dress as instructed, my hair and makeup flawless. To anyone watching, I was the same Emma I'd always been, elegant, accommodating, the ideal hostess who anticipated every need. Jake worked the room like the showman he was, one arm perpetually around my waist, his grip too tight whenever he introduced me to someone important. "My beautiful wife," he'd say, never using my name, as if my identity was solely defined by my relationship to him. After dinner, Jake clinked his glass for attention, standing at the head of our dining table. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, flashing that $1 million smile. "As you know, we're celebrating a significant milestone. Our little beach prank video has officially hit 5 million views." Applause rippled through the room. I maintained my practiced smile, though my fingers tightened around my wine glass. "But that's not all," Jake continued. "Due to the exposure from this video, I've secured funding for the Westlake Development Project, a deal I've been chasing for months." More applause, louder this time. Jake raised his glass higher. "I'd like to toast to viral fame, to new opportunities," he paused dramatically, "and to my wife, who's such a good sport." Everyone turned to look at me, glasses raised, smiles on their faces. I lifted my own glass mechanically, feeling their eyes, seeing not concern or empathy, but amusement. To them, I was just the punchline in Jake's joke. To Emma, Jake declared, who proved she can survive being stranded on a deserted island. Maybe next time we'll leave for longer. Laughter erupted around the table. Carter slapped Jake on the back. Sequel video. Even more views. I maintained my smile through sheer force of will, even as something inside me crystallized into perfect, diamond-hard clarity. This was it. The breaking point. After the guests departed and we were alone in our kitchen, Jake was still riding the high of his successful evening. "That went perfectly," he said, loosening his tie. "Henderson is practically begging to invest in Westlake now. All because of that video." "Yes," I agreed quietly. "All because of the video." Jake glanced at me, finally registering something in my tone. "You're not still hung up on that, are you? Come on, Emma. It was just a prank, and look at all the good that's come from it." "Good for you," I clarified. "Good for us," he countered, his expression hardening slightly. "Everything I do is for us. For our future." I set down the wine glass I'd been holding. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like it's always been about you. Your career. Your image. Your entertainment." Jake's face darkened. "Don't start this now. I'm not in the mood." "When would be a good time?" I asked, my voice steady. "When should I schedule in my feelings about being abandoned on a beach for hours, then mocked in front of millions of strangers?" "You need to loosen up," Jake snapped. "Learn to take a joke. Everyone else thinks it's hilarious. Everyone else wasn't the one stranded without water, shade, or communication." Jake ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, exasperation evident. "What do you want from me, Emma? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry you can't appreciate good content when you see it." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't even recognize the man I'd married. Had he always been this callous, this self-absorbed? Or had I simply been too deep in my role as the perfect wife to notice? "I'm going away for a few days," I said finally. Jake's eyebrows rose slightly.
What?
"Where? I need some space. Some time to think." He snorted. "Don't be dramatic. You're upset about a stupid prank from a month ago." "Maybe I am," I conceded. "But I still need some time away." Jake studied me for a moment, then shrugged.
Fine.
"Go to a spa or something. Clear your head. Just be back by Thursday. We have the charity gala." That was Jake. Always focused on the next appearance, the next opportunity to shine. He didn't ask where I was going or how to reach me. Didn't express concern about my emotional state. Just gave me a deadline for when my feelings should be resolved. "Okay," I said simply. He barely looked up from his phone as I left the kitchen. "Good night," he called absently. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my heart strangely calm despite the momentous decision I'd just made. This was it. The marriage was over, had been over since that beach, though perhaps it had ended long before that. As I packed a small overnight bag, I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was simply ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to reclaim my life. Ready to show Jake exactly who he had underestimated all these years. The moment I drove away from our house that night, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I headed straight to my secret apartment, the one Jake knew nothing about, and for the first time in years, I slept deeply and dreamlessly. No one was watching, judging, or measuring my worth against their expectations. I was simply Emma again. The next morning, I called Victoria and Eleanor, my financial advisor and attorney. "It's time," I told them both. The machinery I'd carefully assembled over the past month whirred into action. For the next 2 weeks, I was a ghost to Jake. I didn't answer his calls or texts, which started as annoyed demands. "Where are you?" "The gala is tomorrow," and gradually shifted to confusion. "Emma, this isn't funny anymore. Call me," before finally revealing actual concern. "I'm getting worried. Please just let me know you're okay." I wasn't being cruel. I was being strategic. Each day of silence was necessary for my plan. Each unanswered message built the foundation for what was coming. On day 3, Eleanor filed the divorce papers I'd previously prepared. On day 5, Victoria completed the final transfers of my assets to accounts Jake couldn't touch. On day 7, a digital copyright claim was filed against Jake's viral beach prank video, a claim based on my image rights, which I had never consented to use for his profit or entertainment. On day 10, the locks were changed on the house that, unbeknownst to Jake, had always been solely in my name, a wedding gift from Uncle Richard that Jake had assumed was jointly owned. By day 14, everything was in place. I sat in Eleanor's office, reviewing the final details. He's been served the divorce papers, she confirmed, though he's refusing to sign. He's demanding to know where you are. And the house? I asked. The ownership documentation is ironclad. It was transferred to you before the marriage and never converted to community property. He has no claim. I nodded, a calm certainty flowing through me. And his business accounts? Since your inheritance was improperly commingled with his business ventures without proper documentation or your informed consent, we've successfully petitioned for a freeze pending investigation, Eleanor explained. It's temporary but effective. The video? Taken down from all platforms as of this morning. Multiple copyright strikes against his accounts. I checked my watch. Then it's time. Jake would be returning home from a business lunch right about now, expecting an empty house, the same house he'd smugly claimed would always be his during an argument years ago. Instead, he would find movers packing up his belongings and a detailed letter explaining exactly what was happening and why. I didn't need to be there to witness his reaction. I could picture it perfectly. The initial confusion, the mounting disbelief, the explosive anger when he realized the extent of what I'd done. Jake, who prided himself on being in control, was about to discover he controlled nothing. As I drove to the airport that afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications. Jake had finally discovered the scope of my revenge. "What the hell have you done?" read his first text. "You can't do this. The house is mine too. My accounts are frozen. My video is gone. My lawyer will destroy you." I didn't respond to any of them. Jake's lawyer would soon discover what mine already knew. I had acted within my legal rights. The inheritance was mine. The house was mine. The evidence of psychological abuse was documented and damning. The unauthorized use of my image had violated multiple statutes. I had learned patience from Uncle Richard, who spent decades quietly building his fortune while others underestimated him. I had waited, watched, and struck with precision when the moment was right. In the airport lounge, I ordered a glass of champagne and finally wrote my one and only response to Jake. Consider this my response to your prank. Unlike you, I don't need an audience of millions to validate my worth. Enjoy explaining to your investors why your accounts are frozen. Enjoy explaining to your friends why you're living in a hotel. Enjoy explaining to your followers why your viral fame disappeared overnight. You taught me an important lesson on that beach, that I was alone even when I thought I had a partner. It's a lesson I won't forget. Don't contact me again. All further communication goes through my attorney. I pressed send, then blocked his number. On the plane, I gazed out the window as we climbed through the clouds. I thought about the woman I'd been just a month ago, the perfect wife who swallowed her dignity, who accepted disrespect, who believed her role was to make her husband shine. That woman was gone. Jake had left me stranded on a beach as a joke, filming my distress for the entertainment of strangers. He never imagined I would leave him stranded in return, not on a beach, but in the ruins of the life he thought he controlled. The difference was I wasn't laughing, and neither was he. 6 months after leaving Jake, I stood on the balcony of my beachfront villa in Santorini, watching the Mediterranean sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The irony wasn't lost on me. After being stranded on a beach against my will, I'd chosen another beach as my sanctuary. But this time, everything was on my terms. My phone chimed with an email notification from Eleanor. The divorce was finally official. Jake had fought it every step of the way, alternating between rage, manipulation, and eventually desperate pleas. None of it had worked. The evidence was too well documented, the legal groundwork too thorough. "Congratulations," Eleanor wrote. "You're officially free. He made one last attempt to claim a portion of your inheritance, but the judge dismissed it outright. It's over. I smiled, feeling nothing but a calm sense of closure. The woman who had once been terrified of disappointing Jake now felt only relief at never having to see him again. The aftermath of my departure had been exactly as I'd anticipated. Jake's carefully constructed image crumbled under the weight of the truth. His investors pulled out when his accounts remained frozen during the investigation. The development project he'd been so proud of collapsed without financing. His social media following dwindled after the video that had made him famous disappeared under copyright strikes. He tried to rally support by playing the victim, posting tearful videos claiming his wife had lost her mind and destroyed him over a harmless prank. But the internet has a short attention span and limited sympathy, especially when several women came forward with similar stories of Jake's controlling behavior in past relationships. Carter and the others, those friends who had laughed while I was stranded, distanced themselves quickly, unwilling to be associated with Jake's downfall. Melissa had actually reached out to me a month after I left, apologizing for her silence during the beach incident. I should have said something, she wrote. But I was afraid too. We all were. I forgave her. Fear was a powerful silencer. I knew that better than most. Uncle Richard would have been proud of how I handled everything. He'd always told me chess was about patience and foresight, about seeing 10 moves ahead while your opponent focused only on their next turn. Jake had been playing checkers in a chess match all along, focused on immediate gratification, on appearances, on winning each moment without understanding the larger game. My phone chimed again, this time a notification from my investment app. The charitable foundation I'd established in Uncle Richard's name had just funded its first scholarship for young women escaping controlling relationships. It wasn't revenge I sought anymore, but restoration, creating something meaningful from the ashes of a marriage that had nearly extinguished my sense of self. I took a sip of wine and opened my laptop, reviewing the final edits on my memoir. Stranded, How I Found Myself After Losing My Way, would be published next month. Writing it had been therapeutic, transforming my experience into something that might help others recognize the subtle signs of emotional control I'd missed for so long. The advance had been substantial, but I donated it entirely to domestic abuse resources. Money wasn't my concern anymore. Uncle Richard had seen to that. Freedom was what I valued now. Freedom and the quiet dignity of living authentically. A message appeared from Victoria, my financial advisor. Investment portfolio up 12% this quarter. Your uncle would be impressed with how you've grown his legacy. I smiled at that. The inheritance had given me options, yes, but it was my decisions that had set me free. The money was just a tool. My courage had been the real currency of my escape. As darkness fell over Santorini, I lit the candles around my terrace and settled into a comfortable chair with a book. No one was waiting for me to serve dinner. No one was monitoring my clothing choices or social calendar. No one was diminishing my thoughts or controlling my movements. Tomorrow, I would visit the local women's shelter where I volunteered twice a week, teaching financial literacy and helping residents build resumes. In the afternoon, I had a photography class, a hobby I'd rekindled with passion. Next month, I'd be traveling to Japan, a destination Jake had always dismissed as too foreign for his tastes. People often ask if I regret not confronting Jake face-to-face. I don't. Some would call it cowardly to leave the way I did, but I see it differently. I gave him exactly the same courtesy he gave me on that beach. None. The difference was I made sure he had a soft place to land, even if it was wounded pride. They say revenge is best served cold. I served mine with a smile, a lawyer, and a stack of ironclad contracts. And the woman he left stranded on that beach? She isn't stranded anymore. She's free, wealthy, and writing her own story. One where she's the main character, not someone else's supporting role. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about making sure they can never hurt you again. And sometimes, the happiest endings aren't about riding off into the sunset with a prince. They're about riding off alone, queen of your own destiny, master of your own fate. That's my kind of happily ever after.